Hello and welcome to day one of my perspective drawing series. All you will need is a piece of paper and a pencil. So welcome to my perspective series. First I did them on Instagram and they turned out to be very popular. So in day one I showed the basics of 1-point perspective cube as an example. Day two was about understanding how to draw ellipses and cylinders. I talked also about two major mistakes in while drawing circles in perspective, and day three was all about drawing a cylinder in perspective. I will leave the links to these Instagram live streams in the description below this video, but since those perspective series were so popular on my Instagram, I will do kind of a refined version for my YouTube, because on Instagram there was a lot of like chat and Q&A with my audience, with people who joined me live. So let's begin with the most important concept in perspective drawing. It's the understanding of the horizon line. Basically, to summarize, it's our eye level, the height from which we perceive any given space. So when we look at the object, when we are in the room, we are at a certain level, we are at a certain height. And this concept, it's artificially constructed specifically for drawing, so it's really helpful, because thanks to the horizon line we can locate our vanishing point. It's also incredibly important concept in our perspective drawing. And today, in day one, in lesson one of my perspective series, I'm talking about 1-point perspective. Below the horizon line, I locate my cube. So we're dealing with frontal perspective, also referred to as 1-point perspective. Basically, that means that we have one and only vanishing point on our horizon line. Now, from all these four corners of this square, we draw the lines up to the vanishing point. So basically this makes our square, which was two-dimensional, make it three-dimensional. So let's draw another line, horizontal, and finish our box by drawing extra vertical lines, and we complete this box. Since this cube is below the horizon line, so we kind of look at it from upside down, we can see its upper plane opening. So this box could be a table, an office table, something like that when drawing an interior sketch. In bolder lines, I'm defining the edges of my cube and the top plane, so we can perceive it in this atmospheric perspective, so those lines feel like they're closer to us compared to the lines that are on the background. Now let's imagine, what if our cube is hanging in the air right on top of the horizon line? So the same idea, we draw those four lines from all the four corners of our square, and our two-dimensional square becomes three-dimensional cube when we draw this little horizontal line to show the depth of our cube. And we finish this box by drawing the plane which is further from us. So in this case, we can see its bottom plane opening because this cube is above our eye level. Imagine we are drawing an interior sketch for an exhibition space, and this box could be easily representing, for example, an art installation hanging in the air, or a light box attached to the ceiling, for example. Next, let's take a look at the third example of our cube. What if it is located exactly on our horizon line? That will give us a perfect example of a frontal perspective, because it kind of a little version of our room in perspective. Because when we think about our rooms and spaces, usually 99.1% these are boxes. We live in boxes. So imagine that we see our frontal wall. So this is how we'll perceive our box in perspective. We'll see only its frontal plane, and in case it's transparent, we will see its. Now let's explore what will happen with this cube if it will be located very, very far from the horizon line. First of all, our upper plane will be opening so much more. So you see, these lines will be running up to the vanishing point, and this will give us a bigger opening of this upper plane. So the closer to the horizon line, the flatter this upper plane appears. I'll add some hatching. Now, very interesting moment. What will happen with the rest of the cube? It will look a bit different, and actually not a bit, but we will have another vanishing point appear. So even though we are talking here in day 1, lesson 1, about 1-point perspective, I still want to touch upon this very important concept. The further this cube from our eye level, it will change how we perceive this cube, this box. And if it's very far from us, perspective effect will happen. So we'll have another vanishing point appear. Just take a look at this bathroom sketch from my online course on perspective drawing for interior design. This is a variation of frontal perspective, of 1-point perspective, right? So we have this frontal wall, but since our room is very tiny, we decide to take a look at it from almost from the ceiling, and this creates this second vanishing point. This variation of frontal perspective is very good when dealing with tiny spaces, when you need to draw a sketch of a tiny bathroom, an office. You can draw this sketch with me in my online course. If you're interested, I will leave the link for you in the description below. So this is how our box will look like in this scenario. Okay, so we've explored some basics of 1-point perspective. Now let's dive deeper into 2-point perspective or oblique view. I prolong the horizon line, our eye level, and locate 2 vanishing points. Yes, there are mathematical formulas to define the exact distance in between these 2 points, but since these are perspective basics, kind of an introduction to perspective drawing, I will touch upon the most important concepts. So here we will draw 2 boxes, 2 cubes, one below the horizon line, another one above the horizon line. Here with the oblique view or 2-point perspective, what we see is the corner of our cube. So we basically see 2 planes, the left plane and the right plane. Compare it with 1-point perspective, where we were able to see the frontal plane and either the bottom plane or the top plane. So here we can see left plane, right plane, which form this corner, and the top plane in this scenario. So basically all the lines are running either to the one or to the other vanishing points. Imagine we can see through with the dotted line. I show this box, so this line will be running to a vanishing point to the left, and this one will be running up to the vanishing point to the right. And all other lines are strictly vertical. In our interior sketch, this could be a simple chair. I continue the idea of the opening plane. So in this scenario, I'm hatching the top plane. So it opens in this variation when our box is below the horizon line. What will happen with this box if we locate it above the horizon line? The same, absolutely the same thing. So we see the corner. this vertical line, and there is a set of lines. One is running to vanishing point 1 to the left and the other one to vanishing point to the right. Let's indicate the borders of our box, and we are finishing the box by simply drawing those perspective lines. To understand two-point perspective even better, I welcome you to draw this box as if it was transparent. So again, if we think about interior drawing, maybe we're drawing an exhibition space. We were commissioned, for example, to draw an exhibition space for a museum, and there is a lovely box installation that's hanging in the air. This understanding of two-point perspective, of course, will help us to make a hand rendering for this interior sketch commission. And finally, for this lesson, I would love to touch upon the concept of objects of different scale in two-point perspective. Let's take a very simple example. A matchbox. Let's draw a matchbox. It's almost one-to-one scale, so it appears on piece of paper as if it appears in real life, so it's a very tiny box, right? So when we are drawing small scaled objects, we won't see very dramatic perspective here, so we won't really see those two vanishing points. They won't fit into even this A3 format piece of paper. Why? Because when we're dealing with small scale objects, the perspective is almost invisible because they are so small. For example, this matchbox, it can easily fit on the palm of our hand, and we can look at it, and our eyes, our vision, it's designed in such a way that we don't see very dramatic perspective with smaller objects. So yes, far, these lines, they will meet finally at the vanishing point. So if we want to look at this matchbox and see the perspective, we might take a camera and turn on maybe fisheye effect or some dramatic perspective effect. What will happen with perspective if we talk about bigger scale objects? For example, a building. So we dealt already with small scale, a matchbox, middle scale, for example, our table or a chair, so those boxes that I've drawn at the beginning of this lesson, those boxes and that scale, which is very ergonomical, which is aligned with the proportions of a human being. And now let's take the third example, really big scaled objects like skyscrapes, like architectures and buildings. Here we will definitely see those vanishing points if we draw these buildings kind of from the distance. And I added some hatching to indicate those different planes. And people scale here will be really tiny, so people will appear approximately this size. So it was day 1, lesson 1 of my perspective drawing series. Let me know in the comments what are your insights from the lesson. One more time, all the links I will leave in the description below this video. So it was day 1, presented by Olga Sorakina from School of Sketching. I can't wait to see you on my day 2, where we will talk about drawing circles in perspective, drawing ellipses. It's gonna be really, really interesting. So can't wait to see you at day 2.